Hey guys, so in this video I'll be talking about what it takes to save $100,000, and I'll be talking about how I did it, and just so that it gives you a glimpse of what it may take for you to do the same. What's going on? So my name is Jung Ho, and I hope this video will be helpful for you because I think this is a great start when it comes to the FIRE movement or just your journey in terms of achieving financial independence. And when it comes to FIRE movement, I think it's very hard to gauge how much you need or how much you need to save. In my last video, I talked exactly about how much you need to save using how much money you spend in a given year. But in this video, I'll be talking about what the first major milestone that you need to hit in order to take that big leap forward towards financial independence. When it comes to the FIRE movement, I think what I would advise anyone as the first step, only after being debt free, is to save up $100,000 and invest that in the overall market. Obviously, if you have debt, credit card debt especially, maybe even student loans with high interest rate, you want to get those out of the way. I think when you have the savings and investments, but at the same time there are things that are pulling you backwards, then it's very difficult to make that positive leap forward when you feel like there's two forces at each side. And so because of that, I think once you're debt free, I think saving $100,000 is a huge first step to try to hit. And this you should try to hit as quickly as possible. And the reason why it's so important to try to hit that milestone as quickly as possible is because as soon as you hit that, it becomes much easier to try to hit the next 100,000. So from 0 to 100,000 is much harder than trying to go from 100,000 to 200,000 and even 200,000 to 300,000 and so forth. The reason why it's so difficult in the beginning is because the compound interest hasn't really kicked in yet, and a lot of the growth that you have, yeah, you could have 20% returns, that is fantastic, but if you don't have a lot of money that's already invested into that, then having $100 in and having a 20% return is only $120. It's not going to make a huge difference at the end of the day, but let's say you got a 20% return on $100,000. That's $20,000 right there, just from 1 year. And so obviously 20,000 is a lot. It should grow anywhere from 6 to 11-12% is great, and I think that is like the range that is somewhat average. And the reason why it's also really hard is because at the end of the day, $100,000, yeah, you can make from 100,000 to 200,000 through investments and through good hits, but getting from 0 to 100,000 is hard to do without money. And so you need to actually save that much money in the beginning. And because of that, it takes a while, especially if you don't have a high wage or you have other financial responsibilities. But the good thing about hitting that milestone is that it will become almost automatic and start to have a life of its own. And I think that's the cool thing about investment, is because there will be a time where it just grows and grows without you even touching anything. And even if you didn't contribute, even though I highly suggest you contribute on a monthly basis or however often that you get paid, but once you hit a certain threshold, it just becomes a snowball basically, and it just becomes so much easier to invest more and save more. And there will be a point where you actually are contributing less than how much is growing by. And so I think being aggressive is so key, especially in the beginning. And I think what actually really got me interested in this whole compound interest is this graph that I'm gonna put up, where basically the title of this is accumulating $1 million. And this is by investing $10,000 annually at a 7% annual rate of return. So 7% is pretty average, I would say, and 10,000 annually, I think it is somewhat doable for most people, especially if they contribute to their 401k, maximize their Roth IRA, at $6,000. And so by you just putting in $10,000, you could hit your first 100,000 in 7.84 years. And that took a while. But the cool part is the next $100,000, from 100,000 to 200,000, which is 5.1 years that it took to get to that point, because that $100,000 is working for you right now. And every year and every $100,000 is getting faster, and you can see the graph just gradually, growing at an exponential rate. And so, and honestly, if you're able to do more than $10,000, just think about how fast you will be able to hit 1 million. And obviously it stops at 1 million, but going to 2 million, to 3 million, the first million is gonna be the toughest, obviously, like it is for the first initial 100,000. But once you hit that 1 million point, you can get faster and faster. And another cool part in this graph that you could tell is going from 600,000 to 1 million, which is basically the last 400,000, took a total of 6.37 years, comparative to the first initial 100, which took 7.84. And so it took the last $400,000 less time than it initially took for the first one. And I think that's why it's so important to try save, because that investment is not working for you in the beginning. It just 7% is great, but it's just not enough at that point. And so I think if you're able to hit that, you're going enough. And so if you're not at that point right now, that's what my challenge to you is, to try to get to that point. Obviously, there are responsibilities, and if you are in credit card debt or anything else that is at a high interest rate, then that's something that you should focus on instead. But if you are just starting off, especially with me, I feel like I'm relatively new in this FIRE movement as well. But I want to use this platform to try to share my journey so that others could also hop along and learn together. This is a graph that I think about a lot when it comes to personal finance and the FIRE movement. So for me, it took a little bit around 3 years to go from where I started off in college, which was in the negatives, to 100,000. So within those 3 years, I had an income that was pretty similar throughout those 3 years, because I was working at the same company, and I did move, but they kept my income as pretty much the same, and I was at around 65,000. And I was probably saving around half my income, and so I think that was around 30,000, maybe a little less. But as I was kind of starting off, I tried to save as much as I could. So starting from just being graduating, so I started off negative 18,000 with student loans. I probably had around 5,000 in terms of assets, and so I probably had around negative 13,000. So going from year 0 to year 1, I came out to around positive 13,000. From negative 13,000 to positive 13,000. So that was an improvement around 26,000. Just to make things easier, I'm just gonna look at it off of this. So from year 1 to year 2, I went from about a positive 13 to positive 50. That's an improvement of around 37,000. And so initially it was around 26,000 for the initial year, and then 37,000. And so you could tell that the growth is starting a little bit, and maybe I'll contribute a little bit more and save a little bit more. And so I'm not quite sure how much of that is the growth of it, but you could kind of see that, my income was pretty much the same. My expenses, I'm sure it was somewhat similar, but not a big difference of that 10,000. And so you could definitely see that growth happening. And then from year 2, where I was positive 50, to year 3 was the big leap, from 50 to 100. And this one took a little bit over a year, and within this, I also got the help of the 401k match. And so I try to maximize as much as I could in terms of contributing, so that I'm able to maximize the company contribution. And so I think that was around 13,000 for working there for 3 years. and just having that match. I could double check the math later, but I think it was around 13,000. And so I would say if without that, I would have probably been around 87,000. But with that match and a little bit of growth and my yearly contribution, I went from 50 to 100. So you could tell that from 0 to 1 was around 26, and then 37, and then 50. I would actually advise you to track your numbers as well. Do it at an annual basis or whatever you feel most comfortable at. You could do it even monthly basis, because this also motivates you to try to hit your numbers faster, or try to cut some expenses that are not necessary. And it is quite fun almost to see your numbers grow month to month or year to year. And so I would say every journey is different, and if you already surpassed this, I think that's great, because you're already at a pace that you're able to start growing your wealth, especially in a time of age where there's a lot of consumerism and keeping up with Joneses, I think. And then, but also there's student loan debt, medical debt, and credit card debt. There's so much things, and obviously there's a high living cost as well nowadays. And so if you already surpassed that, that is great, and I think there are people who are still trying to get to that point. And so if you are not there, I think it will require a lot of patience and self-discipline. And sometimes it'll go down. Sometimes I've seen my numbers drop 30% during the March of 2020. And for me, that was a time for me to feel like, I need to contribute more money, because the stocks are undervalued at that point. Honestly, if you could try to hit that number first, it would only get easier. But if you want to hear more about this, for me, I think this is a platform where I want to just continue to share what I learned, because I'm not there yet. Honestly, I'm still learning. I'm still very new, and I'm still very early in this game of FIRE movement. But if you have any questions or comments, I'll leave them down below. But hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Peace.